Good afternoon. It's Monday, January 23rd. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. A peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians can only be reached through direct negotiations, U.S. President Donald Trump told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night in the first telephone conversation between the two since Trump's inauguration. The American president invited Netanyahu to Washington next month, and a date for the meeting is expected to be set in the coming days. Trump assured Netanyahu that the U.S. will work closely with Israel to attain a peace deal with the Palestinians. A statement released by the White House said Trump described the conversation as very nice, adding the U.S. president emphasized the importance of the USC's and the close military, security, and intelligence cooperation with Israel. The two leaders also discussed the Iranian nuclear deal and the threat of an Islamic State and radical Islam. On his part, the Israeli Prime Minister expressed his desire to work closely with Trump to forge a common vision to advance peace and security in the region. Discussions are underway over the transfer of the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said in a statement yesterday. He described the deliberations as being at the very early stages. Kellyanne Conway, an advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump, said the new administration views the issue as a top priority one. David Friedman, the new U.S. ambassador to Israel, plans to reside in Jerusalem even if the embassy remains in Tel Aviv. While Friedman has yet to receive Senate approval for his posting, he owns an apartment in Jerusalem and has gone on record saying he intends to spend most of his time in the capital of the Jewish state. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met with Jordan's King Abdallah in Amman yesterday and discussed a list of steps to be taken if the U.S. relocates its embassy to Jerusalem. Abbas said the two had agreed on a number of measures if Washington decides to implement such a decision. He described the coordination with Jordan as essential, especially because King Abdallah plans to visit Washington and Moscow in the coming weeks. The Palestinian leader, meanwhile, called on the Trump administration to engage in negotiations with the Palestinians and revive peace talks with Israel. Meanwhile, Jabir Rajoub, a member of the Fatah Central Committee, warned that moving the embassy to Jerusalem will create a war and the Palestinians will renege on the Oslo Accords. Joining us from our studio in Tel Aviv is Professor Uzi Rabi, the director of the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Tel Aviv University. Professor Rabi, welcome.
Hi. Good
Professor,
afternoon.
the Palestinians say that they would view the transfer of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem as a declaration of war. What kind of effect or repercussions will such a move have in the Middle East?
Well, basically, it's a very tense problem, definitely. And I do think that Donald Trump considers that seriously. But in my opinion, everybody is playing the maximum play. And then in the end of the day, we're going to get back to the middle. It includes both Palestinians, even Jordanians, and Trump. I don't think that this is something to be implemented in the coming days or the coming weeks. So let's wait and see. Of course, if this thing is going to be put or being implemented bluntly, it would raise the ire of many in the Middle East. So I think that we should just take it as kind of a trial balloon, even if the Trump administration is considering that seriously. It would take some time, and in my opinion, this is a maximum play, as I said before, and then everybody is going to get to a middle course.
Well, looking back at the past 8 years of President Barack Obama, what would you say is his legacy in the Middle East?
Well, unfortunately, this is a very chaotic legacy that was left behind. Crushed states, ISIS in the middle, but I would say and dare say that was what left behind is that America is no longer acting as a superpower. It is acting as an individual or particular state. And this, in my opinion, affected negatively on many Middle Eastern players who take the United States as kind of a factor not to be trusted, everybody for itself. And if I would ask, actually, or be asked about the legacy, it is a very combustible Middle East, and we should wait and see. But there is a lot of damage here. It is, of course, being followed by humanitarian crisis, which is being followed by a geopolitical disaster. We have the Russians and the Iranians in the eastern flank of the Mediterranean, this is definitely a break with tradition, and we have a totally different chessboard here. So we should wait and see, but each Middle Eastern player should adjust himself to the changing circumstances.
When you talk about the humanitarian crisis in Syria, how does that play into Obama's legacy?
Well, I think that the simple fact that that kind of, or such atrocities had been carried out under the Obama's administration policy, well, this in fact is kind of a very, very, I would say, bitter legacy. We should remember that 3 years ago, Bashar al-Assad was warned by the United States not to use chemical weaponry. The world was informed that there is sort of an agreement by which to pull out the chemical weaponry out of Syria. What we were left with in 2016 is a massacre by chemical weaponry, and that actually left a signal that the United States doesn't keep up to its word. It is, of course, raising many, many questions regarding the Iranian 5+1 agreement. And again, as I said before, what was left behind is kind of a legacy by which to say that America is no more a factor when it comes to Middle Eastern policy. And as a Middle Eastern player, it is not to be trusted, actually. It is not kind of a, I would say, better strategy to lean on the United States because it is not to be trusted. So basically, we'll have to wait and see, but this is a totally different chapter in the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East, and this what we are left with.
Well, Professor, what do you see as the challenges that are facing the new Trump administration? Is it Egypt? Is it the strengthening of Iran and Russia in the area?
I'm not sure about that because, you know, paradoxically speaking, Trump, in my opinion, is going to implement what I call the America First policy. So he would have a saying in some Middle Eastern topics, but not as an interventionist, not as a kind of a player who is going to influence or affect it in kind of a tremendous way. It is more of, or more sort of, an American First policy nature, which is going to be measured by cost and benefit. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but I'm not sure that Trump is going actually to do something which is really, really dramatic when it comes to the 5+1 agreement with Iran. We are looking forward to see actually how he's going to act in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But, you know, if I would have to take kind of a gamble on that, I would say that it would be sort of an American First policy, and here and there some things to be reckoned with when it comes to America, because it has direct, I would say, influence on American interests. Right. Of course, we should wait and see, but the Trump administration should be taken with a grain of salt, even if Israel thinks that a Trump administration is sort of a friend, sort of an ally. I think that when it comes to Middle Eastern politics, we should be much more reserved and see how things are being developed from here on. Of course, it's very interesting, very curious to see actually how Trump is going to take action. But the main thing that we are left with, and this is something to be remembered because this is the Obama's legacy, right. We are in an unprecedented situation when it comes to superpowers and the Middle East, and this is a break with tradition, at least in comparison to what we had in the 19th and the 20th century.
Professor Uzi Rabi of the Moshe Dayan Center of Tel Aviv University, thanks so much for your insight, and we hope to have you back on IBA News soon.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
A convoy of more than 100 vehicles made its way to the capital today as part of a protest against last week's house demolitions in the Bedouin village of El Hiran, in which police officer Erez Levy was killed when a Bedouin driver, Yaqub Abu Al-Kayan, ran his car into security forces present on the scene. The motorcade set out from Kalanswa in the center of the country and the Shoket Junction located in the south, causing major traffic congestion along Road 6 and on Highway 1 leading to the capital. The demonstration, which is now taking place outside the Prime Minister's office, was organized by the High Monitoring Committee for the Israeli Arabs, which called on Arabs from across the country to take part and come out against state-ordered house demolitions in the Arab sector. In a related development, the High Court of Justice is set to decide later today on a petition submitted by relatives of the Bedouin driver who are demanding that the state immediately return his body. The family claims Yaqub Abu Al-Kayan did not deliberately ram his vehicle in police and that the incident was not a terror attack as police claim. Police have conditioned the return of Abu Al-Kayan's body on the commitment by the family that they will hold a small nighttime burial. The prosecution had originally agreed to release the body at 6 p.m. and that the funeral will be held at 9 o'clock tonight, but the family rejected this, insisting the body be returned without any preconditions. Residents of Amona are threatening to renege on an agreement reached with the government last month to evacuate the outpost voluntarily. In a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu and Education Minister Naftali Bennett yesterday, the residents accused the two of failing to keep their promise, complaining the construction work of the nearby hilltop to where they will be relocated had not yet begun. The residents noted that there are only 2 weeks left until the court-ordered evacuation and demolition of Amona is carried out, and said they are no longer bound by the deal to leave the outpost quietly. They called on Israeli civilians to come to Amona and assist them in preventing the outpost from being demolished. Turning to the ongoing investigation against the Prime Minister, and Shaya Segal, a former advisor to Netanyahu, arrived this morning at the police Lahav 433 anti-fraud unit in Lod to give his testimony in the so-called 1000 case involving allegations that the Netanyahu family received improper personal favors and gifts valued at hundreds of thousands of shekels from billionaire film producer Arnon Michelin. Meanwhile, the portrayed close relationship between Netanyahu and Milchan has taken a hit. Yesterday, Likud MK David Amsalem accused Milchan of leaking details of the gifts he gave in an attempt to bring down the Prime Minister. Speaking in an interview with Army Radio, Amsalem charged that Milchan lied during his questioning with police and that no one ever put a gun to his head and forced him to give the Netanyahu family such expensive gifts. But it wasn't long before unnamed associates close to Milchan responded. In a statement given to the local media, they wrote it was embarrassing and worrying to see such a smear campaign against Milchan, launched by emissaries acting on behalf of interested parties who were given specific instructions against the man who dedicated his life to fortify the security and prosperity of Israel. Responding to the statement, the Prime Minister's office denied attempts to besmirch Milchan, stressing that the Netanyahu and Milchan families share a deep friendship. Violent clashes broke out this morning at the Haifa District Court during a hearing for the head of the Julius local council, Salman Amar, suspected of murdering local resident Munir Nubani. A relative of the victim stormed the suspect and his attorneys. The outburst quickly spilled outside the courtroom, where clashes erupted between supporters of the council head and the victim's family. A special police force was called in to contain the disturbances and used pepper gas to disperse the crowd. It took over an hour to restore order and separate the sides. 2 Julius residents were arrested for disturbing order at court, and 4 others were taken in for questioning. Omar is suspected of murdering Nubani during a dispute outside the council building in September. He allegedly shot him several times, fled the scene, and later handed himself in. The European Parliament in Brussels today held its first ever conference with pro-Israeli activists hoping to persuade the European Union to outlaw the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. According to the activists, the BDS is a proponent of hate speech and anti-Semitic rhetoric whose goal is to bring about the end of the Jewish state. European lawmakers and Israeli ministers for social equality, Gila Gamliel, Deputy Knesset Speaker Hilik Bar, and other Knesset members will speak at the conference called Include, Invest, Involve. The conference was organized by Europe-Israeli Public Affairs, a Brussels-based pro-Israel advocacy group. Its director, Alex Benjamin, told European media outlets they intend to expose the activities of the BDS movement and demand concrete actions be taken against them. Head of CRIF, the umbrella group for the French Jewish community, said the BDS has been deemed illegal in France. This month, the city of Jerusalem kicked off its new fund for financing early-stage startups for students in the capital. Called Fresh Fund, the initiative hopes to provide young, aspiring entrepreneurs experience with funding and investment. We visited Fresh Fund, and here's our report. Venture capital, accelerators, incubators, and innovation. All these terms are familiar to those involved in the startup nation's growing high-tech world. Having a good idea and product isn't enough to succeed. You need money. Zaki Jamal, a Harvard-educated entrepreneur, believes students are the key. He founded Fresh Fund in Jerusalem to give capital to Israeli students trying to develop their venture.
We identified that there's demand around early stage capital, despite this being the startup nation and despite there being tons of talent and all this great technology and IP coming out of the universities. No one was focused on this segment of founders. And so we decided to start Fresh Fund.
Jamal teamed up with Siftech, a nonprofit which serves as an accelerator and gives office space. Built on the idea of students helping students, Fresh Fund has chosen 16 students from diverse backgrounds to be on the board. It'll be their job to choose who to invest in.
It allows us to create this dream team of student investors who have a wide variety of skills and expertise and will help us identify the next big student startup.
The board has yet to pick any venture.
Fresh Fund invests between $20,000 to $50,000 US in early stage companies at valuations of between $400,000 to $1 million, so somewhere between 5 and 10% of the company. We're keeping it quite broad because the variety of startups is going to be quite big. You see some startups where, which is just 2-3 people and an idea and a presentation, and they're really early stage, and an investment in a company at that stage is the definition of high risk. And you have companies that are a little bit, more established. They've been around. They might have a working product. They've already validated the market to some extent. In which case, it's less of a risk, and so the investment amount and terms need to reflect that degree of risk.
But why pick students who are amateur investors? Isn't that risky?
Students are connected to innovation on a grassroots level. They're connected to where the innovation is happening, often on campus. They're early adopters by nature. They want to try new things, which means they're early adopters of technology, which means they're early adopters of concepts in their mind that they're willing to experiment with, which is really important, I think, in the process of innovation.
The students will be guided by a team of experienced investors and other mentors.
We're offering a one-of-a-kind opportunity to learn what venture investment is like firsthand. So for a student who's maybe a second or third year student who's trying to figure out what to do after graduation, who probably doesn't have enough experiences in their resume to go get the job that they want, we give them an opportunity to actually jump into this space as decision makers. It's not like it's not an internship where you go and you do assignments, or if you're lucky and you make coffee if you're unlucky, but you're actually in the process of identifying startups, conducting diligence process, doing the relevant market research, and actually making the decision where to invest.
It takes a while to see any return on investment, but that's not the entire goal.
I think Jerusalem is the ideal place for what we're doing. One, because the amount of talent you have out of the universities in a relatively small space is unparalleled in this country. Two, because it's such a small but deeply connected ecosystem of startups where everyone helps each other and everyone wants to see each other succeed, which is a great place to start and validate a new project. I think it also allows founders here to dream much bigger, because they know that they'll be supported, and they know that it's okay to fail, specifically in this ecosystem more than other places, and people who are super ambitious as a result.
At a time the world is becoming increasingly anxious about future food sources, the Israeli company NR Gene says its technology has the ability to assist international seed companies in producing more resilient, higher-yielding crops. The company says its technology could revolutionize the development of new varieties of wheat. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 60% more food will be needed to feed a world population of some 9.6 billion people in 2050.
Every field of wheat or any other crop should produce double in 30 years in order to meet food demand. Okay, and for that you need better performing varieties, so better genetics of every variety. And this is exactly why Energy come to the picture, because we can predict the better performing varieties on the computer before we test them in the field, and then we accelerate the development of such new varieties.
Now you can predict what are the changes that you need to do to those plants to get to a specific trait like yield, and you can do it very directly to a specific geography, to a specific stress, and then Africa could benefit from that technology the same way as all the rich geographies like Australia, US and Canada can.
In finance, the stocks were down on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. The shekel was mixed in foreign exchange currency trading. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast is for even warmer temperatures tomorrow, especially along the coast and the lowlands. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That's our broadcast for today. Please join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be at this desk to bring you the latest news from Israel. Until then, I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.